Greetings and welcome to Hillcrest Cellar 44's last wine notes of the season. So we're just getting ready to ship out the May shipment, and those are the wines that we're going to taste today. And we'll look forward to September as we move into harvest, kind of a whole new world of releases and quite a few new wines looking into the future a little bit. But let me quickly introduce to you the three wines that we're going to ship out. I have a super beautiful and very rare wine from Italy with a little bit of age on it. It's got about 10 years in the, since it was fermented. It's super beautiful. La Pig, without saying, probably one of our most highly sought after wines, super beautiful. A wine I love to grill, barbecue like most of us, and we're moving into that season, so a wine that's really geared for that, just drinking beautifully even this morning. And then finally, back by popular demand, the Foeder 2018. This is a wine that we've had sitting in Germany for about a year and a half, waiting. There were some containers and shipping issues many of you are aware of, and so finally that landed here a couple months ago, and I've got some incredibly great German wines in your future. So without further ado, Cesinese de Fila. And this is a grape that has an incredible history. So it said that there are 2,800 varieties grown in Italy out of somewhere between 4,000 and 8,000 in the world. This is a grape that the Romans drank. It's from an area called Lazio. And Lazio is the commune right around Rome. So the Romans were great consumers of wine. Everywhere they conquered, they could grow grapes. They put grapes in, made wine, including places like France to a great extent. And but they did produce their own wine, and this was considered the best of the best, the Cesinese. And Cesinese are they're elevated hills, so Rome is very close to sea level of Mediterranean, but to the east and the south are hills that were basically cleared. Cesinese means basically to cut, or cese means to cut the wood. And so a lot of the nobility would have vineyards, but also would spend the warmer summer months at these high elevation sites. And this was that grape. And it's not only a wine, but it's also a particular, we'd say, clone or selection of that grape. So De Fila is the place, the Cesinese is the grape, and those two have come together. And it's something that fell out of favor, wasn't really well known, and today there are more and more producers, especially once again young producers in the old world are going back and picking things up. And this one is made by three brothers that have taken over from their father, who for 60 years basically toiled growing this grape, making wine. And a lot of the area is, De Fila has a lot of international varieties in that, but this is the old traditional stuff. So anyway, it's 2012 vintage. This wine would have been put in bottle in 2014. So it's the point at which I love to drink wines. So when wines are very young and you first put them in the bottle, that's the smell is the aroma. The smells that develop from the wine aging is bouquet. And for me, I like that kind of trade-off of that 50-50, and that's where this wine is right now. It's got kind of a color that is, it's medium to dark red, but just a little bit of like a bricky brown around the edge. So let's take her for a quick spin here. Super aromatic in a very complex way. So one of the things about Cesinese is the fruit tends to really pop, especially when it's young. This wine, you smell it, and you smell this beautiful kind of like earthy dried rose petal, but right alongside of it is this beautiful acidity. So Rome is a very warm area, so the grapes that are typically grown in central and southern Italy tend to be higher acid. And this really kind of shows when I smell it, I actually salivate in anticipation of tasting it. But this beautiful kind of cross between red fruit, a little leathery, that dried rose petal kind of character. They just smell super sensational. One of the also things Cesinese is famous for is its balance. So there are a lot of grapes that are like really fruity or real high acid or super tannic and structured. Cesinese is famous for all these things kind of coming together, and it's been that way for 2,000 years or a couple millennia, which is pretty amazing. So a lot of the same flavors are the smell that actually I picked up and spoke a little bit about. The one thing that I would say is different when I put it in my mouth. There's this beautiful, almost like cedar component, and that's something. It's interesting to see it. I've not tasted more than maybe 10 or 15 Cesineses in my life, but it's something I associate with Bordeaux. We've talked about this in prior tastings, where you get this cigar box, kind of lead pencil, which is that cedar with like a sweet smell. And this has that very, very, very long, a little bit of tannin, which is nice. Kind of it reinforces it, shows this wine still has a little ways to kind of go, but it's really kind of, if you look at it like a flower or a rosebud, it's really opened up maybe like 80-90% of the way, and it's really showing a lot of beautiful flavors. I can still taste the fruit. I still get this beautiful kind of a mouth-watering kind of acidity back on the sides, and that's one of the things I love about Italian wines. Italian wines oftentimes are hard to drink by themselves because of the acidity, but they're maybe and arguably the greatest wines on the table because of that acidity and what it does to food, and then the food will soften that acid. So super, super, super beautiful. Very rare, unusual wine. A good friend of mine is the exclusive importer for this wine, and it's something we've been talking about for a while, and here we go. It's something, once again, 2012, there's only a little bit of it that's brought into the United States, so please enjoy. Next wine I don't spend a lot of time on is the Le Pig, the first of the food-inspired wines that we made. We did on the lamb, of course, to go with lamb, bovine to go with beef, and then this wine, of course, to go with pork. And you know, oftentimes when we do like barbecue sauces and these really kind of high acid sauces in the summer on grilled meats and that, the acidity kills parts of the wines that we drink. If you take a wine like a Cabernet Sauvignon that has wood and tannin on it, the acidity of the wine actually enhances things. So when you take lemon juice and you put it on oysters or you put it on a taco, basically it pops whatever flavors that are there. So if you're popping wood and tannin, that's not very interesting. So how you do kind of combat with that is you take something that kind of equals that. In Barbera, super high acid, no tannin. This wine has really no oak on it. It's aged in the big Boti, the big oak barrels. And so we would expect it to be just super supple fruit, super creamy fruit, and for that to be the flavor that's kind of really promoted or advanced. So super black, spicy cola, cherry fruit. I mean, whew, it's a breakfast wine, as we might say, but a little bit of like a sweet spice, kind of, I don't know, like a cardamom or something, just a nick of it that's really interesting. I go back to, I've not associated that with this wine before, but the beautiful thing about wine is every time you approach great wine, there's always a different twist, and that's part of what makes great wines great, is the complexity and the nuances that it's peeling back the onion, as they say. A lot of ordinary wines that are nice for everyday drinking are kind of one-dimensional. A lot of fruit wines are that way, that you keep smelling it, it always smells the same kind of thing. So. Tender, fresh, bright fruit, no tannin, sweet fruit that super, super lingers. A very unusual style of wine, very classic style of wine. Unfortunately, I don't see a lot of those type of wines produced in the States. We have a little bit of the disease and we like oak and tannin on everything, and I like oak and tannin, but it's like salt. If you use it properly, you don't notice the presence of the absence. So anyway, enjoy that this barbecue season. And then to finish up with 2018 Foeder. So the 2018 vintage is a very different vintage from what we've produced in the past. 18 was a warmer vintage, which translates into lower acid. And the wines of the Mosel are naturally very high in acidity. So the reason we leave a little bit of sweetness in there is this tension to give you that raciness. So when you have a vintage that has lower acidity, we would ferment it out a little bit more. And this wine comes across as being quite a bit drier than prior vintages of Foeder. And that's part of the magic of fine wine. So, you know, of those 4,000 to 8,000 grape varieties, there are probably 100 or 75 that are super sensitive to sight. And then the most famous of those are Pinot Noir and Riesling, where you really get a super strong fingerprint of place. It's almost like looking through a pane of glass. So this wine shows the 18 vintage. It'll also show the slate. As we all know, the wines that we produce in Europe are all on slate soils. And there's what we call minerality, that character that's passed through the wine. Hard to describe, but when you see it, you know it, as they say. So take a first spin. Super beautiful, like green apple, a little bit of like a lychee fruit. It's still, it's kind of like an unripe, beautiful, perfumey fruit. So it's not a sticky, sweet smell at all. It's super, super clean crisp. Once again, makes me salivate. I look at Barbera oftentimes as the equivalent of Riesling, where you have this beautiful, beautiful acidity and the super beautiful, the most pure fruit in the world. And this is what this really shows. Beautiful, completely integrated. Opens up very gently, almost like in the mouth. It's almost like unripe peach a little bit. That beautiful acidity. When you bite into an unripe peach, you get that kind of tucked up in the back end here, that kind of tart, almost a little bit kind of edgy acid. That's nice. And like the La Pig, it's just super, super long, all fruit. There's no competition from, things you find in other wines like wood, malolactic fermentation. So just super, super pure, beautiful, and incredibly long. To finish up with, one of the signs of great wine is length. A lot of nice to drink, easy, cheap wine, sometimes unfortunately even expensive wines, is you swallow the wine and the flavor drops off a cliff. Great wines go on and they feather. If it's a wine with wood, it will feather off and the wood will pick up and then that'll eventually feather off. Really, really great fruit with nothing on it in terms of the winemaker's fingerprint. You just get this incredible, incredible length. And it's the kind of thing you typically don't think about, but subconsciously you do. And it's the kind of thing, like if you put 6 wines in front of somebody that have kind of the same flavor profiles and one has this incredible length in that, we tend to reach for things that have this balance and this texture and this elegance in the palate. And oftentimes if I do a flight tasting, comparative tasting blind with 6 wines in that, and they're all kind of the same in that, I'll go back and look at like oftentimes what has the least amount left in the glass, and that tells me that's the thing that I was most fascinated by and kind of reach for. So with that, we'd like to say have a great summer. These wines will be beautiful this summer, will be beautiful in the future as well. We appreciate your support, and we look forward to a super exciting 21-22 wine club season with lots of new things in store. So to the genie in the bottle, and be safe.